welcome to another video on Glenn's Vintage Radio on YouTube. This is a 1934 RCA Victor Model 143. Purchased it at a auction in Chatham. You can tell it has been pretty well cared for over the years. It's got the usual, few dings and scrapes and such, but nothing missing on it, which is really what drew my eye to it. There's the inside of it. You can tell there's been a little bit of moisture over the years get to it, but nothing that it was sitting in. This is just normal that this bit of veneer, nothing that is major, would come loose over time. It's got an airplane dial on it, all the knobs. And there's the tube complement, courtesy of radiomuseum.org. 8 tubes. It's got push-pull, which lends for some pretty good sound. And here are the bands that it covers, A being the broadcast band, and 3 others. It's got pretty good sound, 4 watts, which is pretty nice on a table radio. And it's a sizable radio. It's 17.8 inches wide, 20 high, and 14 deep. So it's a bit of a monster, and I couldn't even guess how much it weighs, but it's certainly a two-hander. Yeah, you certainly know it when you're carrying it. And the grill cloth on this is the original grill cloth on it, which is in fantastic shape. So again, it tells me that this radio was well cared for over the years. Here's the dial lit up. This is after refinishing the radio. I normally take some pictures along the way of the refinishing process, but for some reason I must have been in a hurry with this one and did not record any of the usual steps along the way to refinishing it, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And there's the before and after. They really use some nice veneers on these radios, and this one I believe turned out quite nice. So hunting the internet, I found some service notes for RCA for the year 1934. This radio appears in both the 1934 and 1935 versions of the RCA service notes, which is kind of nice because I believe the 1934 notes are a little blurry, and 1935 were a little more legible. So pulling the radio out of the chassis, one of the first things you notice is, wow, it looks like everything is original. One of the ways I normally am able to determine that these things are untouched is this is an electrolytic capacitor down here, one of the big cans that you'll see on top later, that has not been replaced, which in some ways is good, in some ways bad, because if people are plugging this thing in and trying to see if it works over the years and leaving it on for a bit, it can mess with some other parts on this radio, and I believe that might have happened, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But you can see all the old dog bone resistors here are still in it. They're quite nice looking, but they often have issues, especially the ones that have any kind of power applied to them. Some capacitors that are in these nice little holders that they have here. There's a grommet that is pretty much mashed with the weight of the radio over its 90-year lifespan. And you can tell all these old capacitors are still in place. So that's always nice to see, because then you can pretty much be sure that what you're replacing in the radio is what will be in the schematic, and not you know, any kind of substituted parts. Here's some more pictures of the bottom side of the radio, and there's some stuff tucked away underneath here. There's more capacitors tucked under the tucked tightly in on the underside of the radio. This radio has a tandem resistor with a 6500 ohm, 4500 ohm, I believe, section here, and 450 ohm there. And this one was a little funny because this spot here is the ground on this tandem. And normally in the past I've seen it's on one end or the other of the ground. These are all connected in series. This one is series connected between these two resistors to ground, and this one is on its own. More of the underside. Again, you can tell I was kind of excited about the fact that none of these parts had been replaced on here. Had a couple of these boards of resistors on it, one on the fastened right to the bottom and one to the side. Here's the other one over here. This is with the brackets taken off of it, so you can see a little bit more clearly. And this is the speaker field coil, and in pretty good shape. So again, real happy to see that. And again, it looked like it had never really been removed from the radio in its entire existence. And this is the top side. A couple of the tubes, I believe I borrowed for another project and had to replace them. And again, here's the tube lineup. This is on the inside of the radio. This is a sticker that's applied to the inside of the radio, and there it tells you the various tubes and their locations, and the IF transformers, and these are for tuning the stations in. And here are the tubes that were either pulled out of it or they subbed in. And again, a lot of these look original to me, because it says RCA Cunningham right on quite a number of them. The output tubes, number 42s, they're Philcos, but here you can see some more, like the rectifier tube is even appears to me to be original. Yeah, kind of nice to see. So one of the first things I do is, now that I have a tube tester, I went out and found myself a Precision 1012 in really incredible condition. Yeah, I probably paid enough for it, but it works very nicely, and it is very clean and saves me lots of time by being able to pull all the tubes on a radio when I first started and to start a project, and making sure I've got something that I can work with. So this is that tube tester. I bought it from somebody in Idaho, and a friend of mine from Chicago picked it up, or it was delivered to his house, and he brought it to me in Ontario. So here I'm starting the work on all of the electrolytics. So I'm carefully disconnecting them, marking them as to what they were on the schematic, and taping some masking tape with the part number and its specs right on the piece of wire that I've removed. There's more of that so I don't get lost. So slow and steady, I have found, is the way to go with this stuff. Here's some of the new electrolytics put in place. Here's some other parts on the back of the radio that had to be replaced. Again, how to spec resistors and capacitors. This is that Candom resistor, and it had an open section here, and then when you were doing some measurements on the other two posts to ground, it just was too weird, so I didn't bother trying to salvage any of that. I just removed it. And there are a lot of people who really take a lot of time and spend a lot of effort in making sure that they try to refurb somehow a lot of these parts and reuse them and restuff caps, and you know, they collect dog bone resistors and repaint them to the proper colors of what the actual resistance of the dog bone is over the years, and then try to put them back in the radio. And I unfortunately, some might believe, unfortunately don't have the patience for that. So what I find too is that, you know, if I don't have the replacement parts disguised, at least the next person, and I'm hoping there will be a next person someday who maintains this radio, they'll at least know what I've done, and hopefully I've done it neatly enough that they'll be able to follow what I've been able to do along with the schematics and make some sense of it. I think when you're restuffing caps and doing that kind of thing, you have to do it whole hog for sure, which I do anyway, but you should have some kind of record of what was done along with the radio, so that the next person can find out what it is you've actually done to it or not done to it. So this is a work in progress here. I started recapping the entire radio while I was waiting for these new resistors to come. So I took, I think there's a better picture coming up here. Yeah, here we go. I took 3 terminal strips, and I bridge. In this case, there's a 3500 and a 3000 here to make up that 6500 section, a 2000 and a 2500 here, all 20 watt, in order to make up the 4500 ohm section and a 450 ohm here. And I went with the brown devils, I think is what they're called, from Ohmite, because they just seem to run a little cooler. Here we go, that's the replacement Candom. You can see I've replaced the cord here as well. for the AC. And here are some of the resistors that I've replaced in the radio. And some of these resistors and capacitors are on the back side of one of the boards. This radio did not, luckily, have much of the old rubber wire, but excuse me. Here is a piece of rubber wire that was on the IF amp tube over to the coil that fed it, and you can see it's just a crumbled mess. You touch it, move it, and pieces just disintegrate. So I replaced it. You can see there's parts tucked away on the wafers here. So there's a resistor tucked in there. It's on 2 posts and 1 wafer, so you have to go hunting for it. You got to be able to get down in underneath here and replace these capacitors too. And in most cases, a lot of these radios I've had luck being able to get in there and get it done without creating any damage. Here's another capacitor that was tucked away in this metal tube on the front near the volume control. I plucked this metal tube off, which is basically holding the capacitor in place. And this one I drilled out and put this capacitor in place simply because it was the best way to hold that capacitor on the front of the radio. So having done all that work, now you cross your fingers, sort of. And if you followed the specs and, you know, done your due diligence, hopefully when you go to light up the radio, you'll have no surprises. So here's a couple of the tools I use when I start up a radio for the first time. Bought this old Variac from an online auction in the States, and when it came to me, it only had 2 prongs and no ground on it, so I've added a piece to it, put a ground to it, and put a 3-prong plug on it. And to that I attach this little box I made up. Basically it's got a transformer in it that knocks down the line voltage just by roughly 6 volts, I think, and attach it, and then I put the radio in here so I can see, you know, what kind of draw is going on here. This also has a button here for the amperage, so you can tell, or sorry, the watts, so you can tell how many watts this radio is drawing. And I always take a look at what the spec is for the radio, and as I'm slowly turning it on and up, I'm watching and listening for anything funny going on, and watching the wattage of the radio to make sure it doesn't climb above the rating for the radio. So after all of that, it lit up, it started to play. I was pretty happy, but I discovered that when I would bump the radio or just tap the table or whatever, it would stop playing, and it was making a crackling noise too, so I needed to do more investigation. So I started, you know, doing some reading, and I read some stuff about some of these, I believe it's called a coupling cap, that might be a problem. So I just took a tool and I tapped away on this coupling capacitor, and lo and behold, I had the problem. So I'm going, okay, well that's a simple fix. I'll just, you know, replace it with this, and away I go. It'll all be good. So I disconnected the old one, temporarily plunked in a new one here, and hey, the radio played great. So I went to bed that night thinking, I got this cured. I'll just, solder this into place in the morning, and I'll be laughing. That'll be one of my two problems cured. I won't be able to tap the radio and have it come on and off anymore, or the stations come in or leave anymore. And then I'll be down to just trying to figure out what's going on with this crackle. So anyway, I get up in the morning and I try the radio again, and my problem's back. So obviously I hadn't cured it by replacing that part. So I thought, oh man, I don't know what to do next year. So I grabbed my signal generator and started going through the alignment process on the radio. And I was having some success on parts of the dial and no success on others. So I thought, okay, well, I still have an issue here. So I went back and read some more on the Antique Radio Forum, and discovered that that it could be the tuning capacitor. So anyway, this is a picture of a isolation transformer that I use along with my signal generator when I'm trying to align a radio in order to keep the radio and the test gear isolated from each other. So yeah, this is again part of the alignment process that was unsuccessful the first time around. These are the IF cans, these are the tuning slugs on it, and oscillator and antenna, that type of thing. RF cans, again, tuning slugs on them. And so those were the parts I was adjusting according to the specs, or the data sheet on it. And one thing I've always had trouble with is finding the proper tool to do that without, introducing a metal screwdriver that would make things sound funny. So I took a whole chopstick and got my sander out and made a little screwdriver out of it. And it's nice and long, and it works well. And that's what I was using on the tuning capacitors, the IF cans. So anyway, back to my problem. So when I was reading, like I said, I found that some of these fins, somebody had written an article in the Antique Radio Forum, or a post, that said that if any of these are bent a little bit or touching one another, they can cause all kinds of phantom issues. So I flipped the radio over, took a good look at it. A couple of them looked fairly close to each other, so I just kind of maneuvered them apart a little bit. They're easy to move, so you gotta be a little careful with them. And then started playing with the radio again, and lo and behold, it cured my problem. So talk about racking your brain over nothing. Another lesson learned here, that you got to really take a good look at these tuning capacitors to make sure that they don't have any issues. So I was left with my crackling issue, and it just sounded like little pops and rattles and bangs in the background. And so I did some more reading again on the Antique Radio Forum and found that this is an interstage transformer that often can have issues on the primary side of the transformer that cause the crackling sound. So again, I did some more reading, and again, the Antique Radio Forum is a great place to post your issues, and some gentlemen there pointed my nose in the right direction as to how to bypass the primary of the interstage transformer. And in my case, this is all I had to do was disconnect a wire from the plate of the AF amplifier and disconnect the B plus as well from that primary. So that's the transformer there, and this is the primary, and replace that with a 27,000 ohm 2-watt resistor between the plate and the point where I removed the green here, and also add a 0.1 microfarad capacitor between the plate of the AF amp and one of the outputs, the grid of one of the output tubes. So I did that, and bang, the problem was instantly solved. So all of that done, I thought, okay, well, you know, I kind of like having the ability to play an external device on these radios. So I discovered that on this radio there is actually a spot where you connect a phonograph. At least that's what they did back in the day. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just get on there and you know, add a Bluetooth device or an auxiliary port, so I could put a Bluetooth or whatever else I want on here. So I just used a single pole switch and you know, connected up to it, and it worked, but I wasn't really happy with it because there was a fair bit of bleed through, and the volume control didn't do anything. The only way I could control the volume was on the device that was connected to the radio. So anyway, I decided that I would replace that with, you can see here, this is a 2-pole switch, and the Bluetooth I have on there, and connect it now directly to the volume control of the radio. And I also, on the other pole, took the heater and intercepted the heater for the first IF, and put it on a switch so that when I switch to Bluetooth, the heater for the tube is interrupted and the radio goes away. And when you flip back to turn the radio on or go back to the radio mode, it just takes a minute for that tube to light up, and then you're back playing radio. So all of that made me more happy with how it was performing, and the volume control worked. So I was able to control it with the device or with the radio. So there's the connection I made on the volume control of the radio. This is the blue wire for the Bluetooth, or better yet, auxiliary, I guess, because you can plug more than just a Bluetooth device into there. And this is a collection of the stuff that, most of the stuff that was replaced in the radio. Pile of resistors and all of the capacitors. So now it's time to reunite the cabinet with the chassis of the radio. So time to clean up the knobs. And I used, again, on the Antique Radio Forum, I found somebody said that on Bakelite radios they use some Brasso, and other guys were saying after that then they use this like a wax. So I use this conservator's wax to shine up the knobs once they're cleaned with the Brasso. So that worked quite nicely on those knobs. And here again are the old grommets that I replaced. I just use some washers, rubber washers that you use on faucets and that kind of thing, to replace them. There are other places where you can get similar rubber as to what was originally on them, but yeah, that's what I chose to do. So that gets us this far, and we'll take a minute and then show you the radio as it's performing. And here is the radio. The Bluetooth device connected to it. There's my switch between radio and Bluetooth, or the auxiliary port I prefer to call it. And that red wire there is the long wire antenna. So let me turn it on for you. And hopefully we've got news playing or something that won't have a copyright problem. There we go.
Township was awarded the Public Merit Award of Merit for Barrier-Free Design. Saugeen Shores police kept busy over the weekend after a report of an unwanted... Maybe because of the ongoing... Family law expert. Live from the city center in downtown London.
The area is 10 times the size of Toronto and double the greater Sudbury area, according to Wildlands League. Companies say the area provides raw materials needed to produce electric vehicle batteries, but scientists are warning that...
It is extremely important.
Majid Al-Shafi, founder of One Free World.
So there you go.
To charge your cell phone.
With a lot of rural roads.
The radio, and to switch it over to Bluetooth or the auxiliary port, you just flip the switch. There we go. That's radio playing on a Bluetooth device, streaming radio from a radio station in Gaylord, Michigan. So you can control the volume both from the radio and from the, just tells me tomorrow's garbage day, and from the laptop or device that you're using. And when we switch back, you'll see it takes a second for the tubes to warm up.
Holy Street and Church Street is now in the process of being
But not long.
For more on these and other stories, go to cknxnewstoday.ca.
So there you have it. The RCA Model 143, built pretty much 90 years ago in 1934. Thanks for dropping by, and if you like what you see, please subscribe to my channel, Glenn's Vintage Radio, on YouTube. And I do intend to post some more videos, if not between now and Christmas, sometime early in the new year. Again, thanks for being here.